All right, well, welcome everyone to Bake a Pie with the faculty and residents. I'm Dr. Jen, and I make a mean pecan pie. And Walter, do you want to tell them where they should scan?
Hello, welcome. If you're watching this virtually at some point, you can scan using my screen right here. And so simply hold up your phone and we have the code which you can scan, and that should automatically check you in. We also have an academic initiatives YouTube channel where all of our events are posted for eternity. So whether you were able to make this live or not, no worries. You can still have a great time checking out this and other great resources that we provide throughout the year.
Yeah, so we're gonna make a pecan pie today, starting with the crust. So a lot of people don't make their own crust because they're intimidated by it, but it's not hard. This is like the main ingredient, this little guy right here. Now it's probably not good for you, but it tastes so great. And typically on these little canisters, they actually have a recipe for pecan pie. And so it's for a crust. And it's really easy. So all you do is you take 2 cups of all-purpose flour, which I've already measured out right here. So I'm just going to dump that in. And then the other thing that's needed is some salt. So I'm going to use some Morton salt here, and use a teaspoon of salt, which is not a lot. All right. Gonna pour that in. And so then these are your dry ingredients. So I usually just kind of want to mix that around just a little bit with like just a little whisk. Not too much, because as you can see, it makes some powder and that's kind of intense. I don't want to have to clean that up later. But you mix your dry ingredients, and then what else you can find for the recipe after your 2 cups flour, your 1 teaspoon salt, is your 3/4 cup of Crisco. And you typically want to have this like nice and chilled. So I've already measured it out as well. And you want to kind of like cut it. So I just kind of like cut it into little pieces and then drop it periodically into the flour salt mix.
I didn't realize it was this viscous.
Yes.
Jenna, I already have a question for you. The salt that you use, is it just for taste or also for texture?
The salt is used for taste, not so much texture.
Okay, thanks. I'm very excited for this.
Otherwise, the flour is just kind of like bland. And it's not like Crisco isn't great to taste. But if you don't like Crisco, some people use butter. But this is the key part. And this is the part they don't have like on the recipe, like on the Crisco can. So this is my secret. Only the residents here at San Jose State will get this. So I use a fork and I kind of like mix this around. And this is like the key. So you can use like a food processor. Obviously, I don't have one of those. And what you want to do is you want to get that Crisco to where it makes like pea-sized, like little pea-sized, that's smaller. Okay, small, okay. Pea-sized balls within the flour. So that just takes a little bit.
And
then
one thing to note, if you are a vegan, I just verified, and Crisco is vegan.
Oh, fantastic. I didn't know that.
Google.
Yes, for all our vegan friends out there, we will be vegan friendly, except for the eggs. No, the crust will be vegan.
There's also plant-based butter alternatives that you can use. I can grab some later just to show. If Crisco isn't quite your jam, there's a number of alternatives that are all out there.
Yes, for sure. So you see how it's kind of like making like little clumps? See that? They're kind of heading toward the bottom, so I'm trying to bring them up. So this is probably pretty good. You want to make sure you don't like overdo it. If you overdo it, it won't like form a nice a nice base and it won't stick together very well.
Are we allowed to ask you where you actually learned to make a pecan pie for the first time?
For sure. My mom taught me how to make pecan pie for the first time. This is so I guess it's kind of a family recipe, although it also comes from the box. So. I'm just gonna get my water.
Yeah, definitely credit, for family recipe there. So I think strategy and technique are a huge factor for making something taste amazing.
Yes, thanks, Walter. I just added a little bit of water. So I chilled water for like an hour. Just at 4 degrees. If you really wanted, if you're like too quick, you could put it in your freezer and put it at -20. And I add a few at a time, but over total, it's about 8 tablespoons of water. And then once again, you can see like these, like, can you guys see? Yeah. You can kind of see these like little pea clumpy things forming. Yes.
It reminds me very vaguely of cottage cheese. It's not at that level, but it's like, starting to approach a similar texture from at least the overhead view.
Yeah. It definitely isn't as smelly as cottage cheese.
So that's a plus. That's a
plus. Yes. Definitively benefits. So you can see how it's like all balling up, yeah? I'm just gonna add the last little bit. And once again, if you had a food processor, my mom had a food processor, but I've never had one, so I just kind of use it by hand. And most students in the dorms don't have one of those, so you don't need one to make a mean pecan pie or even just a pie crust. Okay, so you see how it's got that like pea-like consistency? That's perfect. This is actually really perfect. But it's key to make sure that your water is chilled and your Crisco is chilled. That helps it kind of sort of form this consistency. I'm sure there's science behind it, but I don't know it. Walter, guesses?
It just looks like a really cool pie if it's chilled.
Cool.
We need a physicist.
So Jen, can we use the same recipe for other types of pies, or just it's just an exclusive for pecan pie?
No, this is actually my pie crust. Like I use this for all my pie crusts. So when I make chicken pot pie, I do the exact same thing, which is obviously a savory pie. When I make my dad his cherry pie for Christmas every year, I use this same one. For apple, it's a pie crust that works. And that recipe I just gave you is for 2. So typically like on a cherry pie or an apple pie, you're gonna like have one on the bottom and one on the top. So what you do, but after it's like in the balls and you kind of just push it together with your hands, I separate it into 2. And then I get my saran wrap. I'm gonna try to place here. Yes, okay, you can see it. And I pick up that little bit that I segmented, continue to kind of squish it together. Into like a ball. And I put it on my saran wrap. Make sense? Yeah?
Yeah, makes total sense.
The only other thing that I do is, besides just like put in a ball, is I kind of make an indent with my finger all the way around it. That's going to help whenever you roll out the dough for it to like crack less. Just makes it easier when you're like rolling it out at the end. Then I wrap that little sucker up and I put it in the fridge for like 3 or 4 hours. So and you can do it overnight. So if you wanted to make like on Christmas, I'll make the pie crust the day before. Okay. And then on Christmas Day, I'll like take it out and roll it.
but through the magic of television, or through the magic of Zoom.
Through the magic of television, we're now going to roll out.
Arrested dough, right?
Yes.
Have you experimented with the, for lack of a non-scientific word, incubation time for the dough in the fridge? Like, could you leave it in there for 2 days, or
That's
is there like
interesting.
an optimal window? Like, is 1 day substantially better than 4 hours?
I actually think overnight's better.
Overnight?
Mm-hmm. But it could actually even work now. So I could take the dough that I just wrapped up now, and I could actually, I'm just going to do the second one real quick. I could actually use that if I wanted to. It doesn't have to go. It's just the cold, like when it's colder, it just tends to like roll out easier. But you don't have to. Good question.
Yeah, now I'm really curious about the science behind this. I'm gonna have to do some
experimentation.
investigating. Yeah.
So here's another trick. So one of the hardest things after you roll out the dough is getting it onto your pan, because it's like you have to lift it and it's like nice and flimsy. So I've started doing this. So this is my pizza board that I like cook my pizzas on. So it doesn't have like a lip or anything, and I can transport it wherever I want to transport it. And then it's perfectly sized for, like a pie crust. So I can just roll out my dough right here on this. And so you want to add some flour first. Okay, and make sure that it's nice and good. It's already trying to bust on me. And then I'm gonna put a little bit of flour on top, so that way my rolling pin doesn't stick to the top. And then I'm gonna roll it.
What kind of flour are you using?
Just all-purpose flour. You could use any flour if you wanted, right? So, sorry, I did it already. So I kind of like to just go in bits. It's pretty nice and these ones are acting funny today because the one I was making before started breaking. But if you see it break like that, you guys can see this, right? If you saw it start to break, you can just come back with your hands and kind of sort of smush it together. So that way.
What usually causes the breaking? Is it that if you rest it longer, is it easier, or is it a ratio of ingredients?
Yeah, I think it's I think it has a lot to do with like how cold the Crisco was, how cold your water was, and then how cold the dough was during the time. So see how it's breaking, and sometimes you can just kind of like push it back out.
Because some of that has to be chilled, because that fat content is with the Crisco. If it overheats too much, it'll kind of thin out really thin, and it doesn't stick together and stuff like that. Come together.
Oh, thank you, Anthony. Are you a scientist?
No, I used to cook.
Oh, okay, all right, that's even better.
I used to be a cook for a restaurant. So
well, then
that's why she rested it for that 1 day to 2 days, because it helps with that, suspend that fat content in there and stuff like that. And you don't want to overwork it with your hands a lot too, because you'll lose the fat content. It'll just start seeping through everything. So that's another thing too. So, and I'm sure she could tell you that it's kind of gotten crumbly when you overwork it with the heat and everything.
Yep. But like I said, so I am not a restaurant chef. But as you can see, it's like I probably should have started this the day before.
I'm not critiquing you at all.
No, I don't think you will.
No worries. So I just did all this stuff for years. So
yeah. Do you have a favorite pie, Anthony? Did you make any pies or?
Pecans, one of my favorite ones. Apples, usually one of my favorite ones. We buy them mostly store-bought now, out of like East Ditch Ranch up north here.
Oh. They're so much better when they're just made with love.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so I'm just gonna try to roll this out just a bit more. Yeah.
I always thought love was a secret ingredient, so glad to see there's consensus there.
Yeah, so that's probably decent. I don't have like, oh, sorry, question.
I know, I was just gonna say it's looking good.
So now I'm gonna spray my pan that I borrowed from my neighbor with a little bit of like, this is coconut oil, coconut cooking spray. I probably don't need it, but I just want to make sure that it doesn't stick to the bottom. And then I just take a knife and kind of run it around the bottom real quick, just in case. Although I don't think it's stuck very to the bottom at all. And then this is my fun little trick. And then I literally just slide it into the pan. And just kind of let it fall into it. I'm a little off. Let's see. And then at this point, you just kind of piece it around the edges. Just work it in. Now, like when you're making like an apple pie or something, right? It's much more important to make sure that it's perfect when the top happens, right? Because you can see that for visual representation. But when you're just making a pecan pie, it doesn't really matter too much what it looks like. But if you're not up for making your own crust, you can purchase them as well. They're not bad, but pie crust just tastes so much better when it's handmade. Okay.
Would you say that this is like also compatible with a cobbler, or is that like require a different level of a base, or how would you navigate that?
Somebody want to Google that? I actually don't know the answer to that. I've never made a cobbler. That was not like my family wasn't a cobbler family.
I don't even know what a cobbler is.
All right. Well, this is emergency. Is there an emergency button?
Thank you for joining us on Zoom. See you later.
Yeah, I'll do some cobbler research, but basically a cobbler has like the dough like sort of crisscross layered on top. And I would say the dough content overall is with, you can layer cobblers, so you have multiple levels of dough and fruit intermixed in between. So yes, I will maybe, yeah, depending on the YouTube views, volunteer to make a cobbler. From my family. My family is a huge apple cobbler family, so it's like it's a big deal. But yeah, let's focus. Well, we can always come back to that later. But yeah, it's just cobbler curious, I guess.
Apple collar with all the crispies on top and everything. Cinnamon crispies.
Cinnamon crispies.
So good.
So I just so now that the pie crust is done, ta-da. Look at that, looks pretty nice. I'm now gonna like make the filling. So for the filling, it's mainly sugar, which is great. So it's 1 cup of granulated sugar, so white sugar, and then 3 tablespoons of brown sugar. I also added a ½ teaspoon of salt. And I'm just gonna mix that just real quick, although I just really need to, no, that's not gonna work. Mix that real quick. So I definitely packed in my brown sugar as I always do. So I'm gonna break that up. And I just melted butter while I was mixing this. Yeah, so if you're being health conscious, this one's got lots of sugar, but it's so great. Okay, and then after you add your dry ingredients. Typically add my wet ingredients, which is going to be 3 eggs.
What would happen if you only use one kind of sugar, Jen? Just not as
Oh, the brown sugar is like vital, in my opinion.
If you only use brown sugar, is it too much?
Yeah, I think that's too much. But if you don't use any brown sugar, it's horrible. And then I just melted a 1/3 cup of butter. Put that in here. And then I need a teaspoon of vanilla. And then the very important ingredient is this guy. Can you see it? Oh, where are you? Oh, this guy.
What is
Can you
this?
see it? Here, let's move it up.
Corn
The
syrup?
Cairo light corn syrup. Oh
Ah,
my gosh, it's the game changer. And you add a cup, which it comes in 2 cups portions. So I'm just going to take the remaining cup because I made one earlier today. And I'm going to drop that in.
So you've noticed a difference with using other corn syrups?
Definitively. This kind of tastes the best. So one of the reasons why I like pecan pie so much is because it reminds me of like pancakes. And the syrupy part comes from this right here. I think this and your mix of your brown sugar. But yeah, this brand is my favorite brand. I'm sure there are other brands, but this is my favorite. You know, and it's light, so I did buy the light version.
If you're doing it light, you're doing it right.
And I got the light brown sugar. So I haven't seen any difference with like trying to cut on those aspects, but I would not go off brand for the corn syrup.
Based on how you're mixing those yolks, you're doing a shell of a job.
Walter.
I tried to fight it, but some puns will just stay in my head until I say them.
is there a danger of over mixing here, or you can
No.
life
So
away?
for this one, what I'm really trying to do is I'm trying to get, because I pack in my brown sugar so much, I'm trying to mix that up. And I'll just be honest, when it's just me, I usually go in with the dry and I mix it up with my hands. But I'm not sure that everyone would like that, so I'm just going to go ahead and do it with a spoon. It just makes it easier, in my opinion.
You would think it'd be easier to find those clumps and break them up in there.
You say what? Sorry?
It would be easier to find those clumps and break them up in there.
With the hands, you mean, Anthony?
Yeah, correct.
Yeah, before you mix in your wet, right?
Yep.
Yeah, that's what I do too. When no one's watching. When people are watching me, I feel like, maybe I shouldn't do
There's no shame in using hands in cooking.
that.
Everyone close their eyes for 5 seconds.
Stop the recording. That's awesome. Okay, so I've got my shell, I've got my pie crust. And you're gonna add your pecans. This is 1 cup of chopped pecans. You don't have to have chopped pecans. You could do whole if you wanted. I just like the chopped better than the whole. I'm gonna go over here and I'm gonna mix this up. Got it. Oh my God, it smells so good. You have no idea. Okay. Well, maybe you do know. I don't know. And then I'm going to pour the liquid mixture on top.
I'm having such strong memories of our first giving last year. Oh man, just was like turkey's usually the star of the show, but this pie was just such a game changer.
Oh, thanks, Walter. And then the little pecans will float up. You can see. And then I like to be a little extra because I just like being extra. And I like to put like a little design with some whole pecans in the middle. Ooh. So some cute ones like so. And you can get it all pretty with this if you wanted. You could just like go all out. I just kind of keep it simple with my 4 in the middle. This is a smaller pie crust. And I'll see how it looks.
Yeah, looks good.
And I'm gonna put it in the oven for 350 for 30 minutes. And it smells so good when it's baking too. Then,
Through
like
the
magic.
magic of television.
Magic of television.
Oh, well, you just fast forwarded time.
Yep.
You broke the space-time continuum. Oh my gosh, that was the fastest 40 minutes I've ever seen.
That does look pretty cool though, the bubbling, how it's like bubbling.
It's
Yeah.
nice, right? So
Oh,
obviously
wow.
you want to let it cool for like 10-15 minutes, and then you can serve it with ice cream if you want. I think it's so amazing without it. But you know, if you're one of those people, you like the hot and the cold mix, it's
I don't have
fantastic.
ice cream though. I'll have to figure
And it's
something
even
out.
better like the next day. It's a nice type of like, I mean, like I said, it reminds me of pancakes, so
It becomes a
really good.
perfect texture right afterwards, right? Once you let it cool down, and yeah,
That's right. So that's how you make a pecan pie
nice.
with your own homemade crust. See, not so hard, right? The main time that you're actually making the pie, it's mainly in the oven.
Yeah, it looks delicious. Thanks so much, Jen.
Of course.
Jen,
great.
would you say that this is a pie you would go nuts for?
Absolutely, Walter. Absolutely. Whew. But yeah, any questions, thoughts, comments?
Thank you so much, Jen.
Of course.
So Zoom has not invented smell sensors yet, so we cannot smell the pie, but it looks delicious, right?
Yeah, you'll have to take my word for it.
Yeah. Thanks so much. It's really good because then you taught me how to make a pie crust in addition to a pecan pie, and then you can just like use different fillings. Are there other pies that you often make, Jen, or are you just specializing in pecan?
So when I first started off making pies, pecan pie was my first, because I actually think pecan pie is one of the easier pies to make. Although that's the one that I think I'm famous for. But pecan pie is one of the easier ones to make because you don't have that extra layering of pie crust on top. And that can get quite, messy, especially if you're not like really good at like using the crust, and like Anthony was mentioning, like you can overwork it and that will actually cause it to kind of break and stuff. So I actually think pecan pie is the easiest. But I also love making apple pie. I think apple pie is really, really good. And where I'm from, there's lots of like orchards. And so we would actually go to the orchards, get the apples and then peel them. And a friend of mine back at home, we would have apple pie making day. And so we would just make tons of apple pies and then deliver them to like all of our friends and take them to work and stuff. But those ones are really fun because you put like another layer on top, right? So it's crust, filling, apple filling, which really just like, it's really kind of the same. It's apples, white sugar, brown sugar mixed. And then you can like just rearrange the pie crust on top and make really pretty little decorations with a little bit of sugar and cinnamon on top, and it's to die for. But that one's just a little bit harder to make. So if it's your first pie, I suggest this one. It's pretty easy.
Looks delicious.
Easier than apple pie.
Oh yes, I think pecan pie is easier than apple pie.
Like I know my dad, he makes grape pie and apple pie. Never made pecan pie before.
Really?
Yeah, I should get the recipe for this. Where's the recipe?
I can tell you right now.
Yeah, why not?
I'll tell you, it's my mom's. So for the pie crust, it's usually on the Crisco cans.
I gotta write all this down though. Hold on.
Well, it's recorded, so honestly, it will
Probably just
like play it back 1,000 times, and I'll still take this recording to the store with you.
So on the Crisco can, it tells you what to use, and it's 2 cups flour, 1 teaspoon salt, 3/4 cup chilled Crisco, and you have to make sure it's chilled Crisco, and then 6 to 8 tablespoons of chilled water. So that's the key. And then you got to make sure it gets into those little balls. And then for the pecan pie itself, the filling is a cup of white sugar, granulated sugar, 3 tablespoons of brown sugar, a 1/2 teaspoon of salt, 1 cup of the Cairo corn syrup. And I typically go light, but you could go either ways. And then a 1/3 cup of melted butter, a teaspoon of vanilla, and then a cup of pecans.
Awesome.
Pretty easy.
Thanks so much, Jen. Anyone else has some questions before I start the recording?
Yeah, Jen, how long do you wait until you cut it because it's still bubbly?
Yeah, so I usually just wait like 10 minutes, just let it cool. And yeah, and then just kind of nice and sliced. That way it kind of like solidifies into like a nice piece instead of like oozing out. It's kind of gross when it oozes. Good question, Lena.
All right, well, if there are no other questions, I propose that we give Jen a round of applause because it looks delicious.
Thanks, everyone.
Very cool,
Wish I
very
could
cool.
share it.
Thank you.